This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, your late night edition of the podcast, a little bit after 10:09 to be exact, on a Tuesday evening, March 3rd. Appreciate you all being here. I'm awake. I'm a wide awake, but I thought, since I am wide awake, let's do the show now. I was planning on doing it either today or tomorrow. I was writing some sports articles earlier today, and so I'm still wired. So we thought we'd join everybody here. Thanks again for watching us right now live on the Facebook, on the YouTube, and on that Twitter thing. Appreciate you tuning in here and listening to us here on the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. And shout out to Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. They shake the hand of the farmer. Check out the link on our X page. Great coffee, amazing coffee. My family and I have been purchasing this coffee for 10 plus years. It's the best thing ever. I can't go a day without drinking some Hemisphere coffee. So check them out. Let's see here. It is, like I said, late. And so lots of things to talk about. I've got by the way, if you're watching me right now, I'm not wearing my ball cap. I know. I usually wear the ball cap or the stocking cap. So you can see I still do have hair. It's a little messy. So thanks for watching us here on all those platforms. And if you can't listen to us, if you can't watch us right now, you listen to us later, we'll be on Apple, on Spotify, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, we are there. We are also looking for new talent here on the Fanatical Elves Network. We have some great contributors right now. Steve Gill, we've got Rod Bloom, we've got Sam the Man down there in Dallas, we've got myself. Joel Cade sometimes contributes. He and I used to write together for Dog Pound Daily. We're always looking for more talent, young talent. If you have a podcast, if you've ever been interested in podcasting, please contact me. Please contact the Fanatical Elves Network. Contact me personally, John Suchan, on the X, full name, JOHNSUCHAN on the X. Facebook, you can direct message us. We would love to talk to you about podcasting down the road. All right, so I'm watching lots of things going on. My gosh, it always seems right. I always say this all the time, but us Cleveland fans, we know this. Like, Cleveland sports are always like the center of the sports universe. I mean, if it weren't for Cleveland, who would people be talking about? No one has any. I know there are other cities in the country. I know you have your favorite sports teams, but come on, folks. We all know that without Cleveland, you wouldn't have, I know there's some people that like to tell jokes and make fun of our beloved Cleveland, but there are so many amazing things that are always going on in the world of sports, especially when it comes to Cleveland. We got the Browns who are constantly in the news just because, right? You got the Guardians who are playing with a lineup. They haven't started the season yet. They're in spring training right now, but here you have a small market team that puts no money into their sport, to their baseball team, and yet somehow they miraculously are winning, or they win usually every season, which is cool. And then you got the Cavs, who the Cavs just beat the Pistons tonight. Yeah, JB Bickerstaff and those Pistons, they beat the Pistons at home tonight. I know they lost. Was it a couple days ago against the Pistons? They got to play them again. Should not have lost that game a couple days ago. They ended up playing tonight without Donovan Mitchell. I said this before, and I'll say it again. Donovan Mitchell, it's a little bit worrisome with that groin injury. If you know it, if you've ever had a groin injury, it takes a while to heal, and he's an athlete. He's going full out all the time playing basketball. And so it's going to take a little bit of time. My guy, Dean Wade, some of you, hey, don't like Dean Wade. Love the guy. Dean Wade's a glue to that Cleveland Cavaliers team. He's been injured with I think like an ankle injury. So we'll see how he's missed his third game today. But all in all, I mean, the Cavs beat the Pistons without Donovan Mitchell. They did have James Harden. They had Tyson, Tyson, who had a really good game. Mobley had a really good game. I heard that Jared Allen went out with some sort of injury as well. So the Cavs, they're fighting through it. I mean, this time of the year, you're in the midst of basketball, the end of seasons. Like if you're talking high school and college, the pros, you're still got several months till we get to that period, but you're fighting through a lot. I mean, it's a long season here in the NBA, 82 games. So we'll see. Cavs are doing some good things. They're winning. They've been more consistent. James Harden, bringing him in, has obviously been a very good thing for this team. Saw that Darius Garland got back with his new team out there with the Clippers. He's now playing with the LA Clippers. He had an injury, that the toe injury. He came back. I saw him hit some highlighted 3-point shot earlier or yesterday. So good for Darius Garland. I know he's not on our team anymore, but he was a big part of the Cavaliers organization for many years. So I'm watching these college games right now. We've got Kansas. The Jayhawks are playing the Sun Devils. Bill Self got thrown out earlier. Now, many of you know, if you listen to my podcast here on the Johnny Cleveland Show, know that I've been doing this show for a while, and I lived in Kansas for 26 years. I became a fan of the various teams in Kansas. I lived in Wichita, was an alumni of Wichita State, got my master's degree from there. Became a big K-State fan when it came to football, especially because Kansas State, when I moved out there in the early 90s, like 92, 93, Kansas State and Bill Snyder, the head coach of the Kansas State Wildcats, was just getting going and they were becoming more popular. And I became a K-State fan. I have a lot of K-State gear. I love their football team. Have rooted for them against, I know, the Ohio State Buckeyes in the years past. I like both programs. I grew up here in Ohio. I'm a Buckeye. I get it. But I spent more than a quarter of my life in Kansas. So I did become a fan of some of the teams. And then when it came to basketball, I coached a lot. And so getting back to this Bill Self story, I coached a lot. And so got to go to a lot of basketball clinics when I was younger and coaching. And Bill Self at KU had a clinic where he would invite primarily high school coaches, middle school coaches to this camp. It was held, I don't know, like in the fall. And so I got to meet Bill Self a few times over the years and really appreciated what he had to say and just some interesting topics that we would talk about. Obviously, you'd see these coaches out at uh, establishments after basketball practice. So it was always entertaining and fun to kind of meet these people and learn a little bit about them and what they're like off the court. Bill Self is a very nice guy. In this game, however, they're at Arizona State that we're watching right now on the TV, and Bobby Hurley is the coach of Arizona State. Now, Bobby Hurley, if you know the Hurley family, his brother coaches at Connecticut, and the Hurleys are hotheads. We all know that. Bill Self can be his hothead too, but they're playing at Arizona State. And if you've ever been there, and fortunately, I had a chance to go to Arizona State to a game when my daughter, who had been playing for Buffalo at the time, women's basketball, about 10 years ago, they had a tournament over Christmas in Arizona at Arizona State. And so I had a chance to go and sit in the arena. It's a fantastic arena. It can be very loud and intimidating. And in this game tonight, between the Sun Devils of Arizona State and the Jayhawks of Kansas, a lot of things going back and forth. Bill Self gets kicked out. Now, his former player, Jacques Vaughn. I don't know if he coached him or not, the coach before Bill Self, but Jacques Vaughn, who was a Jayhawk, he is the interim coach. So he just got literally teed up. These refs, you could see Vaughn went after the refs. It's just highly entertaining if you like to watch that sort of thing in basketball. It's what's funny is those two guys get teed up. Bill Self gets thrown out, and yet here's Bobby Hurley, who's constantly always belittling and yelling at the coaches, or not the coaches, at the referees. And in this situation, he hasn't been kicked out yet, but we'll see what happens the rest of the game. Okay, that had nothing to do with Cleveland, I know, but I digress. Back to Cleveland. All right, so the big news this week happened yesterday was Titus Howard was traded from the Houston Texans back or to Cleveland here. Titus Howard was a regular starter, very consistent starter for the Texans. He's 29 years old. He's coming back now to Cleveland. They signed him on a 3-year deal, $63 million contract. The Browns need to build this offensive line, and this is a good first step in doing that, making this trade. I think the Browns gave up a 5th-round draft pick, so not too bad. He's a little bit older, 29 years old, but the Browns, listen, I know we're Cleveland fans and I know we're always hopeful. I'm hopeful. I laugh at the idea that some people still are really putting this team so far down the ladder. And I think ESPN has the Browns ranked dead last. And I know I've had conversations with colleagues at work talking about, well, who's worse than the Browns? And I made an offhand bet that I said at least the Jets are, but we'll see how that comes to pass in the future. Anyway, the Browns aren't that far removed from having very successful seasons. Us Browns fans know that, but sometimes we kind of forget. But people outside of Cleveland constantly forget. The Browns went 11-6 2 years ago. No, 3 years ago when they had Joe Flacco come in. Now they had a dismal following season when they went 3-14 with Stefanski, and last year was 5-12. I get it. Stefanski's gone now. He's been fired. We've brought in Todd Monken. But we're not that far removed from having a really good team again. We have many players coming back that have been part of this organization for several years, including a player like the best player in the league, Myles Garrett, who will be entering his 10th season. Speaking of Myles Garrett, I just wrote up a story that you'll read later in Dog Pound Daily. I've started writing for Dog Pound Daily again. Would appreciate you tuning in and watching them, or not watching them, but click on their website, Dog Pound Daily. And there was an article written recently by somebody else who writes for Fanside, which is Dog Pound Daily is part of Fansided, Fansided. And this contributor just writes for Fanside, and he wrote a story about a fictitious trade of Myles Garrett to another team in the NFC. And so I wrote about that fictitious trade offer. My colleague at Dog Pound Daily, also who I write with, he had written a similar article in terms of Myles Garrett and some conversation that was being had a week ago on ESPN. Because as many of you know, if you recall, Myles Garrett was demanding a trade last season, last off season. He went on that circus fiasco of a circus that going everywhere saying, I want to trade from the Browns. I don't want. And then all of a sudden at the very end, the Browns gave him that extension and he's back in Cleveland and he wants to get a championship. Now they didn't come close to a championship, but he did set a new season high for a record-breaking season record of 23 sacks. Anyway, this article created this new fictitious trade deal with his NFC team. And so my article kind of talks about all these fictitious trades and why we're in the silly season of the off season. We Browns fans I know some of you out there, you are still unrealistic about Myles Garrett. If you look at Myles Garrett's contract, go look at it. Go take a second, go Google it, and look at the contract. He got $90 million basically up front when he signed that, when he re-signed his contract a year ago. Now, the way that it sits on the team's end, the hit that the team will take every year, starting, this past year and every year moving forward, the cap hit increases every year all the way through the time that 2030. After 23, after the 2030 season, he can become a free agent in 2031. Now, the cap hit is a hard hit to the Browns. Okay. The dead cap money that the Browns would owe Myles, though, goes from heavy to low, where there's nothing. So on that side of things, the Browns have already up front paid Myles, but on the cap hit and how that affects the cap, which the Browns have to, budget under or around, that's what's really hurting this team now. They're, going forward as well. So the cap hit, for example, in 2030 or 2029 on Myles Garrett's contract is like $58 million. Now, right now, it's like 24 million or 27 million, and then it jumps to like 28, 29 million this next upcoming year. And then by 2030, it's up about 57, $58 million. So if you haven't paid attention, go look at that because it is going to have a bearing on what the Browns can do. Now, obviously, I know, and we know if we followed this team long enough that Andrew Berry is clever with how he spins the money. And I don't know, I'm just going to let him do all the work. But just looking at it from my perspective and someone who doesn't, study all this cap stuff all the time, it's a lot of money. And so these fictitious trades are just not going to happen. And in these other writers' opinions, they say that not going to happen, but they should happen. But in this article that I had read, also that this fictitious trade of Myles Garrett, the writer in this article even suggests he takes it one step further and he starts talking about how the Browns don't seem like they know what the hell they're doing, and he refers back to the fact, this is kind of funny, that the Browns didn't draft, or when the Browns had their draft last year, that they had no idea what they were doing because they drafted two running backs and two quarterbacks. That was his reasoning for the Browns having a dysfunctional, not knowing what the hell they're doing. All I can do is just giggle at that, laugh at that. It's just hilarious. Obviously, this is from a writer who has no idea. They don't follow Cleveland sports. You don't have to, but um, you'd think that most people would be, a lot of analysts, we know this, and people that follow the team really appreciate and see how great that last draft was for the Browns last season. Yes, the Browns did get two running backs, but that's because the Browns didn't have a running game. Yes, the Browns did draft two quarterbacks, but that's because the Browns didn't have a quarterback room and took one guy who Stefanski really loved, Dylan Gabriel, and Shador Sanders happens to be there, so they took him. Now, we know the rest of the story with Flacco and Kenny Pickett, but for this sports writer who's not very clued in on Cleveland sports to suggest that that was a poor move and dysfunctional is pretty ridiculous. When the Browns did have a very good tactic, they went out there and they got two top defenders. Now, I know a lot of us didn't know a lot about Carson Schwarzenegger at the time, and us fans were questioning that selection when he was picked first in the second round. But look at how it's all turned out. Mason Graham, Carson Schwarzenegger, Harold Fannin, the running backs, Quinshawn Junkins, Dylan Sampson. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. We know that as Browns fans. So it's just careless writing. It's careless. It just annoys me as a sports writer myself when I read this stuff. So go check that article out. It'll be coming out soon on Dog Pound Daily. Appreciate it if you do. All right, let's pause here for a quick commercial break. This is the Johnny Cleveland podcast. We are back here on the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Thanks for tuning in to us. It's a Tuesday night, late night edition of the Johnny Cleveland podcast. We're coming to you at 10:28. Thanks again for tuning in. We really love your support, your loyalty. I'm going to push this again. If you have any interest, you're watching this right now in podcasting yourself, give us a listen, follow us, and then give us a message, direct message us, or you can direct message me, John Suchan, on the X or on Twitter, and we can discuss your future as a podcaster. All right, so we've talked about the Browns a little bit. There have been a few other stories today with in the NFL. One of the big ones, and something that a lot of Browns fans have been speculating a lot or more, is Kyler Murray is going to be released when the NFL season, I think it starts officially next week, opens up. Kyler Murray is going to be released by the Arizona Cardinals. Many Browns fans are thinking, oh man, that would be kind of interesting to bring him in. Now, I've already given you my opinion on this, but I think that would be, I don't think a lot of Kyler Murray. I know some of you think that's ridiculous, but, and he's had good seasons. I'm not going to, and I know what he did when he came here to Cleveland like 10,000 years ago, but that was a while ago. And yeah, he's a good quarterback, but he's small. And I just don't see why you're all enamored with it. It's kind of like, now obviously he would be a huge he wouldn't be a huge upgrade. He would be an upgrade if you're looking at Willis, the other guy we were talking about last week, the guy who hasn't played a lick of football, and Shador Sanders has started more games. It, obviously, taking someone like Kyler Murray would make sense in that department. But we already have all these things twisting and turning with the Cleveland quarterback situation. You have Shador, you have these two rookies, like I just mentioned, Dylan Gabriel before, Shador Sanders, and then you have this Deshaun Watson thing. We still don't know how that's all going to pan out, but we also know how much money is tied in to um, Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously, with him being released, the Cardinals, with Murray being released, the Cardinals are taking most of that salary. So whatever team takes him, and so that is a benefit, and that would be intriguing on that end as far as the money's concerned, because it would be very small amount that the Browns would have to put up there for getting Kyler Murray here. We'll see what happens. I have no idea. I wouldn't, like, if it happens, it happens. I'm not gonna, be hugely disappointed. I don't think it's the right move, but I'm not Andrew Berry and I'm not the Browns. But hey, they haven't won any Super Bowls yet. I haven't won a Super Bowl yet. So as far as I'm concerned, my opinion is as good as theirs at this stage. So we'll see. You probably might think the same thing if you're a Browns fan at this point. You sit during games, have season tickets, and sit in the cold, sit in the rain. When you see this team struggle, we're always going to stick behind our Brownies, aren't we? Though we might get down, we might be dejected, but we always come back. We always come back because we have that internal Cleveland Browns heart, and that's always the best part. I wrote an article earlier this week too, sticking with the quarterback situation. Let's say we don't get Kyler Murray. If we're looking at the draft, would the Browns even consider drafting another quarterback? I think that's a possibility. And one of the guys that we talked about, that I wrote a little bit about, is Penn State's quarterback, Drew Aller. Drew played, grew up here in Ohio, grew up in Medina, went to Medina High School. And before this past season, a lot of people thought that Drew Aller would be a high draft pick. He got injured. I think he broke his ankle or whatnot about 6 or 7 weeks into this season, and he's been recovering. And so he went to the um, combine in Indianapolis over this past weekend. And so he talked about, his backstory. Obviously, he grew up a Browns fan. His parents, his family, his grandpa have season tickets, and so he's been to many Cleveland Browns games. And so the idea of coming and becoming a Cleveland Brown would be, in his words, what did he say? It would be, awesome, great. Um, I'm thinking of, I can't think of the word right now. It would be surreal, is what he said. Surreal. I think if Drew Aller is there in the middle to late rounds, I don't see harm in looking at a kid who's 6'5", 6'6", got a good arm, great arm, and, was a lifelong Browns fan. Stranger things have happened. Now, I know back in the day, 40 years ago, when Bernie Kosar came out in the supplemental draft out of Miami University, grew up in Youngstown, that was sort of like how all the stars just aligned perfectly for the Browns. And the Browns were one of the best teams back then and only got better with when Bernie came in and he ignited a fan base. And to this day, he is a legend, as many of you know. And shout out to Bernie. I saw that he was back in the hospital today. Again, he's had some issues with his. I'm not sure if it's his liver and some different things, but we care very much about you, Bernie. Hope you're doing well and you get back out as soon as you can. But as far as Drew Aller is concerned, um, it would be interesting. I don't think it's a you know low risk, high reward sort of deal, I think. And if he's there and he's in the draft and the Browns have that opportunity, why not give him a shot? Especially, let's say if Dylan Gabriel is an attractive candidate to be traded, maybe Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta decides, hey, I want Dylan Gabriel. Maybe that could happen. Who knows? So check that article out. I wrote it on Dog Pound Daily as well. So let's see here. Tribe, the tribe, they're not the tribe anymore, they're the Guardians, but I wrote my notes down here. I actually have notes. I know, isn't it? You can't even tell, can you? The Guardians have struggled a little bit this preseason at training camp out there in Arizona. So we'll see how they do as the season approaches. I think the opening game is it the last week in March? I know the home opener is April 3rd, that Friday afternoon. So check them out. Love to go. I'm going to be up in Michigan. I know that state up north. Don't love the football program, but I have my wonderful son Alec who lives up there in the Grand Rapids area. So wife and I are gonna head up there and check that out. His birthday's coming up. Shout out to Alec and his birthday coming up in April, and a shout out to my stepson also Clay. He's got a birthday that same week, so we're gonna be celebrating those kids' birthdays. So shout out to them. I don't know if any of you guys listen, just a shout out to, I listen to 97.1 here in Columbus. Some of you are familiar with that radio station here. There's a sports radio, and they've come out with I think their second annual pizza contest where they find 64 pizza places here in Columbus. I didn't realize that there are so many damn pizza places here. Never knew, would never have known that. But, there's some really good establishments that I guess are missing from this 64 team bracket. But if you're interested, they have a website. Go to I think maybe their radio website and go vote for your favorite pizza here in Columbus. Lots of interesting suggestions. There's a place here in town called Sexton's, Sextons. That's how you spell the name of the pizza place. And they're they're popular for their style of pizza. It's extra. They cook it extra long and well done, and crispy is like what they like to say. But they also have a pizza that they make with pickles. They call it a dilly pizza. I've heard it's really good. So we were talking here, wife and I, about we might order that this weekend and check it out, see what it's all about. But it got a lot of high reviews, high rankings from a lot of people that have had it already. So that's an interesting food item on your pizza. Would you eat pickles on your pizza? It's got cheese, the pizza's got cheese on it. So I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see. Okay. So check that out. They have 97.1. They're doing their pizza college sort of bracket, and it's kind of fun. Listen to them in the afternoon. They talk about it quite a bit. So on my ride home from work, I listen to them talk about pizza, which only makes me more hungry. The last thing I just wanted to touch base, I do a lot of writing also for Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders. Shout out to them. They're a great group run by Natalie Turk. Shout out to him, all the group there that works, who writes for Northeast Sports Insiders. Munch Bishop writes for them. Bill Petrolo, I think I got that last name wrong, but Bill, shout out to you, and Munch and Natalie and all the other writers for Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders. We cover a lot of things here, from high school sports to college sports to the pro game. I've been fortunate enough to got credentialed last year with the Brownies. Hope to do that again this year. I am credentialed also for the MAC tournament coming up next week. Starting, I think the games start with the women's side of things on Wednesday, and the men's play on Thursday, and then the semis are going to be Friday, and then the championships are Saturday. I'll be up there for the women's game on Friday for the semis, and the championship games in the morning, and the men play in the evening that night, Saturday. So I'm going to try to be there for those games. The Miami of Ohio, the Red Hawks won again. They beat Toledo tonight in a very close game. So they finished the regular season undefeated. So they are the MAC regular season champions. There's been a lot of discussion about, should Miami get in? If they win the tournament, obviously. If they lose in the championship game, for example, I guess Akron is a very strong second team behind Miami. If Akron were to win the championship and get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, should Miami still get a bid as an at-large team? Absolutely. My answer to that is yes. Absolutely yes. There are a lot of people, including stupid-ass Bruce Pearl, who used to coach Auburn, who's just a moron when it comes to talking. He tried to say absolutely not. His favorite team, Auburn, should be getting in, even though Auburn's lost like 20,000 games this season. All this stupid crap and how they analyze it and they break it down and they use all these metrics is just boneheaded. It's called the eye test. It's called, hey, this team went 30 wins and 0 losses. Hey, let's acknowledge that. Let's recognize that. And if you don't think that they're one of the 64 best teams in college basketball, then you are an idiot. Any of you out there that think that Miami, and listen, I'm not a big Miami fan. I'm not a big Miami fan, especially seeing what Miami's head coach did the other day, stomping around and being an idiot himself at halftime when they played the game at Western Michigan, acting like a sissy 12-year-old kid, just because he didn't get his way. He damaged property. He went over to this, they had speakers and everything like that, and he knocked them down. He broke them. Apparently, Miami University is fining the coach $2,000 or $3,000 and telling the coach that he has to buy this person a new stereo equipment. Good for them, but I'd be fining him a lot more for that, all those shenanigans that he's doing. Anyway, so you can see I'm not a big Miami fan, but Miami is undefeated and they just won the regular season. So they should be in it. Come on, folks. They're automatically in it. If you can't see that, if you can't appreciate what they've done, and you can't consider them one of the best 64, 68 teams in the bracket, I have no idea what you're watching. So hopefully Miami will get in there and we can stop having this discussion. All right. Everybody, I hope you have a very good rest of your evening. It is now 10:43. You can all go to bed. Again, thanks for tuning in here to the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network. Later this week, We will have our Fanatical Elves show on Thursday night with myself, Steve Gill, and Sam the Man from Dallas. Later that evening, I believe Rod Bloom and his brother Jeff will be having a special guest after our show. I think they usually broadcast their show around 9 o'clock, so tune in for that show and all the other programming here on the Fanatical Elves Network. Again, thanks again for tuning in. Take care, and remember, folks, too, that's right, keep smiling.